Hello and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. I'm your host, Paul. So let's just dive right in. Today we're talking about Universal Basic Income, UBI. It's talked about a lot. I find it interesting and fascinating a topic, and everybody seems to have an opinion on it. What is your opinion? What are these other opinions we see in the world on the internet? Okay, let's find out. Okay, so the world's inequalities 2018 report found that if left unchanged, the global inequality will continue to increase as it has in recent decades, and that the poorest members of society would be most affected by automation. Okay. Audience members asked a panel of experts whether universal basic income was the solution to the problems posed by automation, but much to the disappointment, experts dismissed the idea that governments should give out free money. Okay, universal basic income. So, automation, they say, will, like in looking back in history, when we had the Industrial Revolution, people have to diversify and upskill themselves and change a little bit, and there's going to be some flux and some unstableness in the workforce and labor markets. So yes, there in more and more automation, yes, there will be changes and some people may become unemployed, but there are new jobs being brought out all the time, about maintaining the automation of the new robots, of the new computers, of the new systems. There's always new work. The more in automation there is, the more creative people there are, and the easier it is to people for their bodies and taking off the heavy lifting of our bodies in society, in the big picture of things. We all now agree that the Industrial Revolution was a good thing in that people's bodies are able to live longer and people's bodies aren't as worn out and knackered, and we generally live longer. That's the consensus of the feeling of automation from the Industrial Revolution. So automation of robots and other things for the work environment, whether it's AI or robots or mechanisms that take some of the labor away from our physical bodies, is deemed to be a good thing. So these experts and the people that made these reports are asking whether universal basic income will displace a lot of people from society and work, and whether universal basic income will be the answer to help people out. And there's another issue at foot here. Another issue is the massive inequality between the wealthy and the poor. And what's not being talked about really is that if there is humongous inequality, as we look back in history again, that's the beginnings of breakdown society. It gets to the point where the poor people think, well, stuff it. I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting this much money. And they've got everything. And people start to feel jealous and angry that maybe the system's rigged or they're not able to get a foot in the door. People will suddenly say, no, I don't care. Let's go and bash the door down. Let's go and even out this inequality. Especially when people become desperate. Hungry, desperate people is when change happens, and that is from inequality. We can talk about inequality all over the world. It is ever present everywhere, omnipresent, it's everywhere. Okay, right, so let's have a look at some of these articles and issues. So as I say every time, this is unedited, unscripted, natural native conversation, British English. So like I said, today we're looking at universal basic income. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What's the solution? So some of the research I've done and some of the things I've been reading talk about it a lot. So that's the first one that we looked at. And they all kind of think that that education is the key, education and a healthcare system and a bit of a safety net. All right, so we're looking at this because of some of these articles where people have decided to bring it up and discuss it. Right, so this one, Finland, where your welfare is unconditional. So in Finland, $667 appears in this woman's account every month from the Finnish government. There's generally, so this one is 2,000 people and is generally selected randomly by people that apply to the program that's been advertised. And often they want a broad spectrum of people as well. So it's not just one part of society or another. Okay. So this woman said that she bought herself a new computer, she got a new dishwasher, and she went on a holiday. Okay, no big deal there. It helps her with buying things. The concept of UBI is gaining traction worldwide because of threatening of automation. The idea was first put forward in like 1797. Wow, that's a long time ago, but it didn't really catch on. And lots of people around the world are talking about it. All right, so so they're saying now, is it a lucky break or is this really going to help Finland? They're still waiting to find out the results. Okay, so that's Finland. All right, what else we got here? However, not everybody who needs it got the money. The first 5,000 people who were chosen at random from more than 175,000 people who applied. The money came from funds given to local government to help communities recover from after the pandemic. So this one is an article from the New York Times. But some people worry that the programs like this mean people won't feel the need to work anymore. But that's not necessarily the case. All right. So again, it's talking about the pandemics, talking about basic universal income. And this was $500 a month from Chicago. And again, it covers most of the same things as the other one did. All right, the next one. This is a little bit different. When given money, low-income parents spend more on the children. So this one is from Washington State University. They did a study saying that middle-income parents, when they're given the money, they will spend more and more on their children. Now, what else? A study looked at expenses more than 52,000 households for 8 months between 1996 and 2015. Wow. Okay, that's quite a large study. In compared Alaskans' household to those in other states, the US become most Alaskans receive the permanent fund dividend each year, a one-off payment to be spent on whatever they like, regardless of how much you earn. So this is a yearly payment from this fund. That's different. And it changes. Okay, inflation, electronics, children, education, fixing broken car, things like that. So again, this is a Pew survey. In 2020, Pew survey found that 54% of Americans would be against the government providing a guaranteed income to adults of around $1,000 a month. Okay, right, so that's that one. This one, upstate New York. Annetta Steele isn't poor or unemployed, but she'll receive $500 a month as part of a universal pay basic program in Ulster County in upstate New York. All right, so this is California. Places from California to Virginia have been testing universal basic income programs. Okay, since the pandemic. Again, 4,200 applicants selected at random again. People spend, they think people will be working so many years that This will be a tremendous amount of money, she said, but no, actually. Okay. While income programs elsewhere tend to focus on the cities, the Ulster County trial includes small towns and remote areas far from the bus lines and supermarkets. Well, there's an interesting spin on it. Those are in different parts of the community. All right, okay, la la la. Again, they repeat a lot of the same thing, pushing up real estate prices. Okay, many people in the county were already struggling with housing costs before the pandemic, when a large number of people moved from New York City, pushing up real estate prices. I'm not sure exactly what that's got to do with it. Showing the surprise of urban areas, but parts of Okay, so I'm not quite sure how that impacts this. The first payments were made in mid-May, spent as they wish. Participants were surveyed physical health, mental health, and employment status. They worried that the basic income programs compared to aid programs offering money specifically for food or housing or to raise children. They also said that cash isn't likely to address structural issues that perpetuate poverty, such as poor schools and healthcare. Now we're getting more to the crux of the matter, poverty. And then finally, we've got this one in England. Now, this is $2,000 a month. Well, they say actually it's close to £2,000, just over $2,000 for 2 years. Again, can spend it on one they like. They're in the northern part of the country and on the outskirts of London. Universal basic income has been discussed for years, blah, 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 blah. Reduce poverty, people's security, living costs, etc. Not everyone feels that way, however. Some say that the cost to the government will be huge. Also, money that could be spent in other areas such as healthcare. And people think that it may discourage people from working altogether. Somebody who works for this agency that's giving the money is hopeful that the trial will be successful. No one should ever be facing poverty, having to choose between heating and eating, she said to The Guardian. So this is an article put to The Guardian. Right, okay. Right, so we've got a few different studies in a few different countries discussing, and they often have a similar outcome, that they're giving this universal basic income to a variety of people that applied. Now, you could discuss that the people that applied were only those that were struggling financially and really needed the money, and those that were doing very well wouldn't apply for these programs, shall we say. Okay, right, so it seems that people are concerned, like I say, for two aspects. One, that there's not going to be the work in the future, which I think is rubbish. I think there will be work in the future. And two, there's the issue of the big divide and gap between lots of money and the super wealthy and those that are super poor, struggling, and the huge inequality, how that all affects society, whether it would destabilize it, and what will happen in that respect should nothing happen, should no changes be implemented. Okay, so the positive sides, looking at positive sides for basic income, is that it's programs, people are, or governments are listening, governments are thinking, people are having conversations about giving money to those that are in need, and also testing the waters with different ideas. So that's a positive. Okay, so there's money being used to try and help what's going to work for the future, because there's conversations about the future and conversations about poverty. Right, so that's established. Right, the negative aspects. So many of these, interestingly, these leaders and these professionals, obviously very wealthy people in these studies, are saying that people will not work and people will become lazy. Now, I've got another one here, which is actually somebody I admire a lot, and that's Jordan Peterson. Now, he's saying basic income, universal basic income is a bad idea. Now, listening to him talk, he says it's a bad idea because people need to feel motivated and needed and be productive in society to give you the motivation to move forward and live and be a positive human being. Now, yes, that's correct. We do need these feelings to stave off depression, such as being motivated and needed and wanted and being a useful person in society. Well, this is where I differ. Now, Jordan Peterson is not, how do I put this? He is not a poor man. He is not struggling. He's had help from his father and his family, and they've got a different ideology. He's a professor, an academic, and I know he's very knowledgeable. I know he's very educated, but I don't know whether or not Jordan Peterson really knows what it's like to be struggling in those circumstances where you're on local authority housing, whether you're needing those benefits to survive, and that there is a large part of society that has had a bad break or bad luck. Okay, so many of us understand that we're living in this day and age, most people will say, from paycheck to paycheck. And what that really means is that at any given time, there could be some really bad luck in your household, which could put you in a very bad financial state. Whether it's a motor accident and you're left without being able to work and you're the main breadwinner of the household, or whether it's an illness, or whether it's a change in government and being destabilized because of civil actions, civil problems within your government, or whether your government's at war with another country. If you're one paycheck away from poverty, then these people, I'm not saying they're all right wing or all left wing, these people that have money and come from money find it very difficult to see what it's like living paycheck to paycheck. And so this is where I agree that universal basic income would be a good thing, because we already have the National Health Service here in the UK. And that helps a lot of people stay away from poverty and not dying, basically, not dying. And I really feel for those countries that don't have a good healthcare system, because there's a lot of desperate people doing desperate things to save and look after the people they care about, including themselves. And I think a government should really care about its people. If a government is not focused on corporations and money and power and control, and it focuses about the people and the society and the country and the sovereignty of that nation, and I'm just guessing here, places like Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, places like that where it looks like they care about their people. The governments really care about their people. Now, if that's the case, then that's really, really positive, really, really happy. You look at the most vulnerable within your society and you start there and lift them up. And as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. All right, so that's where I think many people should start. And they have the same kind of philosophy in the army, that what's holding back your team is the most vulnerable or the weakest person. And so you start with that person and you help him or her get better and more improved, and then the whole team work better as a whole because of it. Now, many Western nations, such as the UK, America, Canada, Australia, they're much more government connected and in bed with corporations. They care more about getting money from these big corporations that invest heavily in each individual's political career. Yeah, you put lots of money into my political career, and we'll see what we can do about changing the legislation in the government to help your industry and to help your particular corporation and company do well. And unfortunately, I feel that's a really bad way to go. And like Jordan Peterson said, I think in the future, really, really big, and this is where many smaller countries are laughing and seeing that in the future, many big Western countries will implode on themselves, much like civil unrest. Almost that you could see with say France at the moment. It was only 4 years ago they had massive civil unrest and issues. Sorry, was it 4 months ago? Sorry, 4 months ago that they had, and now they're rioting and protesting again, which is really, really severe and detrimental to the country and the economy of their country. Also, we got to remember that France is the second backbone behind Germany, holding up the whole of Europe. All right, France is the second biggest financial provider to the European Union. So, all in all, I believe if you don't think about your people and if you don't look after the most vulnerable people in your society, then yes, your country will implode. The civilization, that huge divide between extremely wealthy and extremely poor is really going to implode. And like I said at the beginning, people will think, stuff it. If you're just going to treat me like this and walk around with billions and billions of dollars, well, where my family are all dying in this Western world, and there's a hospital there, and there's a pharmacy there with all this money and stuff that could help me and my family, and you're just going to put more and more barriers in the way, then I've got nothing to lose. That's what it comes down to. When you've got nothing to lose, you'll do anything. I know from first-hand experience that some people that have been living on the streets, and I've worked with people living on the streets, will happily steal to a set amount of money so they go to prison for the Christmas and to get warm and get dry and get healthier. Because being in prison is a far better situation than living on the street in the winter. And thanks to some of our politicians, I think notably Boris, it invested a lot of money into putting in to stopping people being homeless. So they put in like pointy spikes in pedestrian areas, especially under bridges, and on benches they would put in a barrier in between each seat. So if there's 4 seats or a bench, they would put something in between it so you can't lie on it. You can sit on it, but you can't lie down. And sometimes you'll see that in airports or in other big waiting areas, so you can't lie down. And I know other countries have spent millions on water cannons to stop protesting. But protesting is part of freedom of speech. So I don't want to go off topic, but being able to express yourself and your disapproval of the way the government is running the country is the fundamental part of having a democracy and having a free country. So if we're struggling to look after our vulnerable individuals, whether it be their pensions and the elderly and being able to heat their houses and they're dying of the cold, or they're unemployed and now they're struggling to get any help with mental health issues. So we come back to this again, mental health issues. They're struggling to get those services because there's too many barriers in the way. Whether being homeless is illegal, begging is illegal. How can you give a fine? How can you fine somebody for being homeless? How does that benefit anybody? I really struggle to understand that. So elevating the lower financial end of society can only raise everything up, and those that are lifted up are less likely to revolt, are less likely to protest and try to bring down the aristocracy, the government, and where all the money and wealth is kept. They're not going to do that. So going back to universal basic income, I believe if everybody had enough money, well, everybody that wants it, had enough money to survive and pay their bills and live happily, then, like Jordan Peterson said, then people will want to work. People will want to be involved with the community and society and be productive and give something back. And that is apparent when you look at Tinker's Bubble and you look at communes. All right, communes that have no cash, maybe they still get involved. They still work. All right, they make stuff. They look after bees. They grow veg. That they are very productive people that live in hippie communities. That live in those communities are all productive and do something. And not just hippie communities. You look at other communities, other aspects where cash has very little intrinsic value to the running of the community. It's more about people, and people are valued, whether they're elderly and they're help looking after children for childcare, or whether they're young and not quite able to be part of the productive community and giving back. So you'll see positive structure starting even in education with Rudolf Steiner schools or Montessori schools, where these left wings or hippies or open-minded people show how children and elderly, all the same, can be productive and help for everybody, you know, for the whole. So universal basic income will help elevate so much more and put off the whole idea that civil unrest will happen because of inequality. So that's where I differ from Jordan Peterson. Like I said, I worked with, what was it called now? In my local community for the Winter Project. That's it, the Winter Project, where the local council would pay some of the churches to allow the homeless in. So when the temperature got below zero, the homeless were allowed to go into the churches where they provided food. And often I would help give out the food, and I would do like an evening night shift. So I would go there in the evening. We would let the people in. We would make them hold their no, I don't want to say confiscate, but we'd put lock the alcohol away until the morning. They would come in, maybe 20 or 30. We would give them the last of the soup or the food that was left over in the evening. They could come in during the day as well. It was, you know, it was open for that. And you know, we would allow them to use the washing machines. I think they had to find some small money donation for the washing machine and drying and stuff like that. And so they would bed down for the night. We would move all the tables and chairs out. They would bed down for the night, and I would just be there for support on my own. And these guys would sleep. Occasionally there was a lady. I can't remember. Was there? I can't remember. There might have been a lady or two there. I can't remember. And then 6 in the morning, they would all get up. They would help hoover the floor, put all the tables and chairs back, give them back their alcohol. And they would all be gone by sort of 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Never a single problem or trouble or anything like that. They were very grateful. And I met a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting characters. And I learned a lot of good information. So that was one project I helped with. And I've helped with a couple of other projects very similar. And I spent more than one night. I think I spent about, I don't know, 15 or 16 nights over a couple of months. So that was fascinating and good for my discovery and growth. So I've seen it firsthand, living on the streets and the poverty, and that we're all, many of us, are one paycheck away from being homeless. I myself haven't had a real fixed abode for a long time, well, for quite a while, whilst living in the UK anyway. I got my own issues on that. So being homeless is a real threat to many, many people. Whether you say that's down to the government, whether you say that's down to your own lack of education or lack of being motivated or trying, you've got your own opinion, that's your choice. But I really feel that universal basic income can help lift everybody up. And people will, once they're healthy and happy, and these services are available to everybody, then I really feel that people will be so much more productive to give back. You just got to look at these other products, communities where there's fruit and veg grown with these cooperatives, especially in these forward-thinking countries like Norway and Finland and Amsterdam and places like this. It is so much more productive to help the vulnerable people and raise them up. And yes, healthcare and mental health services, heating, these things are the beginning. And I think we just need to move forward with that. And universal basic income will definitely help lift up so many people and help society as a whole. Because society is not just about those that have got money and those that are working. Society is the whole group of people. And you've got to take that in mind. You've got to really bear that in mind when you're thinking about the poverty gap. All right? Because there's so much more than just getting rich and making money and looking out for yourself, you know. The legacy should be about society and how the society is a better place after you're gone. So that's kind of a whirlwind of my thoughts from what I read on the internet, from what I see from Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan, lots of these articles from The Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, some other articles in different countries, and my experience, the country. That's everything all rolled up into one. I'm sorry it's been a bit quick and a bit fast and a bit... Whew. Right, so we'll leave it there. As always, keep learning, enjoy learning, have fun. You've got to make it fun. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care and have a look after yourself and have a good week. See you again. Bye-bye for now.